currently subject to consultation until the 19th of June. I would like to introduce today's panelists, Daniel Wang, Chair of Series G, which is the Climate Risk Steering Group at IIS, and Hannah van Wilden, who is the Head of Supervisory Practice and Operation IIS. They both will present the consultation. The presentation slides have been posted to our website, so you can look at them independently from the presentation. And after the presentation on the consultation paper, there will be Q&A session, and we will answer your questions. And please post any of your questions using the Q&A function. Daniel, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Miroslav. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all participants in this call. Very much welcome you to this public webinar. So my name is Daniel Wang. I'm the chair of the Climate Risk Steering Group of the IIS. And today we are essentially presenting what will be, in the IIS terms, the third public consultation relating to climate risk-related material to seek everyone's feedback. And as Miroslav has shared, this has been put out for and issued for a couple of weeks now, and we are, very grateful that and awaiting your comments and feedback in the coming weeks. So if you can go to the next slide. So I just want to introduce very briefly the IIS's work on climate risk. So far, it has covered 4 areas. Broadly speaking, supervisory practices, scenario analysis, data, as well as insurance protection gaps. The first 3, and especially on scenario analysis and data, I would say by now it's largely complete in terms of internal workings, and the material has been issued for public consultation and of course in earlier rounds, and your feedback has been obtained. On the data side, we've been carrying on with climate risk data collections for 3 years now, and we've, as the slide mentioned, we have annually reported our findings and our analysis in the Global Insurance Market Report. In terms of supervisory practices, today's webinar essentially is on the 3rd installment of supervisory practices. The first 2 have come in previous consultations. In terms of insurance protection gaps, while this does not fall squarely within the CRSG's remit, but we have very much been a supporter and providing inputs into this work stream as well. And as many of you know, last year in December, the IIS released its a paper on net cat protection gaps. Next slide. So this slide will give sort of a recap. Some of this I've already mentioned. You can go to the next slide. That's sort of a lag, I think. Yes. So just to provide an overview again, the IIS is committed to supporting its members to further strengthen its focus and actions taken by insurers to assess and address climate-related risks and to support an orderly transition to net zero. Sorry, you can go back to the previous slide. So, as mentioned, we have released several reports and papers on this topic over the years, in fact, dating back from 2021. And as well as over the last 2 years, performed gap analysis of existing supervisory material, and as I've mentioned, at least 3 consultation papers to date. I won't dwell too much on this slide, but you can go to the next one now. In terms of the timing of the 3 consultation papers, so as you see on the screen, package 1 was, was issued in early March last year, and we've of course by now received everyone's feedback. Package 2 was in November last year, and likewise we are assessing the feedback that we've received on those areas. And the key one is what we released a month ago, and which is now very much the live public consultation, and it will go on till 19th of June this year. On the right-hand side, you see the various content. I will summarize to say that package 1 essentially is the high-level ICP introduction, just setting out the scope of where climate risk belongs in what areas in different parts of the ICPs, and getting a feedback on that. Package 2 was very much focused on, at least in my mind, macroprudential supervision and ERM as the key components. And of course, there are other areas that have we found that might be useful to mention climate risk considerations in some of these other ICPs, including ICP 19 and ICP 21. And very much the subject of package 3, which Hannah will go into in a little bit more detail in a couple of minutes, essentially on ICP 15 and 16. And we hope to also address some of the feedback and comments released and obtained from yourselves and members of the public under package 1. So the aim is to better incorporate climate risk into all aspects of supervision, and for insurers to incorporate consideration of climate-related risks into their governance and operations. And we hope that through the work of the IIS, we can promote, together with other standard-setting bodies in the other parts of the financial sector, a globally consistent approach to addressing climate risk. So I'll pause here now, and that's sort of a brief overview, and I'll pass the time to Hannah to talk a bit more about the package 3 in a little more detail. Hannah, over to you.
Thank you very much, Daniel, and also on my behalf, welcome everyone, and thank you for your interest in this consultation. So before I will explain more details about the consultation package, let me also share as a reminder some background on what are ICPs versus what are application papers. We've been using these terminology in the consultation and throughout this presentation, but for those of you who might be less familiar with the work of the IIS and the particular differences between these materials, we provide this background to you. So the ICPs stand for the Insurance Core Principles, and they form the globally accepted framework for insurance supervision. And the ICPs seek to encourage the maintenance of consistently high supervisory standards in all IIS member jurisdictions. What is set out in the ICPs are principles, standards, and guidance materials. And these apply to insurance sectors globally. So any insurer, small and large. We are not proposing any changes to the principles nor to the standards within the ICPs. We are only proposing certain changes to the guidance material. We're doing this because as the IIS, we believe that the ICPs themselves, they are written in a manner that is broad enough to capture a wide variety of risks, including climate risks. However, we are updating some of the guidance material, which provide further context and further examples in relation to climate-related risks. Then we're also making some proposals to updates to application papers, or what we call supporting material. Supporting material is there to help IIS members and supervisors, and also insurers that are supervised, to put these ICP requirements into practice. So application papers themselves, they do not include new requirements. It's more around giving advice, illustrations, recommendations, or other examples on how the supervisory material, so the ICPs, can be implemented in practice. I should also note that the proportionality principle applies to the content of both our ICPs and our application papers, which means that supervisors are asked to tailor the actual application of the requirements to the complexity of their sector and the complexity and size and the risks of the insurance companies active within their sectors. So moving on to discuss a little bit the scope of the package of this consultation. As Daniel already mentioned at the high level, we have multiple ICPs and multiple topics being covered in this session. So firstly, related to application material, it's a combination of new material being developed related to topics that were not yet covered in the paper we published in 2021. But it's also additional material and updates related to topics that were already covered in the 2021 paper. So relation to governance, risk management, and internal controls, so ICP 7 and 8, it mainly is updates to existing material. Related to ICP 14, valuation, this is largely new content. Relating to ISP 15 investments, we also included some new elements and as well on the enterprise risk management for solvency purposes. Then on ISP guidance material, we made some edits and proposed changes to the guidance in ISP 15 and 16. And in both cases, the application paper material can be seen as additional support for those changes. So additional elaboration and explanations on that. In the next slides, I will go one by one through all these topics and highlight in a bit more detail the specific elements and topics that are covered. So on ISP 7 and 8, so on governance and risk control topics, here the changes are really to reflect the comments that we received as part of the first consultation. So in the first consultation, we asked the questions to you and other stakeholders on whether there would be any benefit on further materials and further updates to this topic. And based on the feedback that we received, we have included additional elements to the draft material. So these elements relate to the role of remuneration practices. For instance, especially for those insurers that have certain variable remuneration practices in their organization, how climate-related risk can be better embedded into this type of remuneration policies. We also discuss the role of the board in terms of competence and experience with climate-related risks. And we discuss also how in terms of the governance and the risk control management, there is the need for risk to be also analyzed, both in terms of how climate risk can affect the assets and liabilities of the company, but also how then maybe decisions at the level of the investment strategy and the level of the overall business model can in turn impact climate change and the environment. Throughout all these elements, we also emphasize the importance of forward-looking assessment. So that's something that you will see throughout each of these different topics. Then moving on to ISP 14, which is around valuation. There we took the approach to give separate guidance and recommendations and examples for the asset side and the liability side, which is really related to the approach of valuation, but also, again, the time horizon. So the need to look further maybe than the typical time time, and also to take into account different issues related to the life insurance sector versus the non-life insurance sector, especially in relation to the liability section. So you see here a couple of things highlighted on the slide that we have covered related to market valuation, amortized cost valuation, and also the possible use of using stress testing or scenario analysis to really help the insurer to test certain assumptions and to really use a more forward-looking analysis in analyzing climate-related risks. Turning now to the scope of package 3, ISP 15. So on ISP 15, this is where we both included a couple of new phrases and items into the ICP language, but then also supported by further supporting material. So this is related to the specific paragraphs that you see here on the slide, related to the role of the supervisor in establishing regulatory investment requirements. It talks about credit ratings and the extent to which an insurer can or cannot rely on external credit ratings and the role it has there. Asset and liability management. Also being aware of the certain data limitations that may exist, in particular when you look at climate-related risks in the investment exposures. And the need to reflect climate-related risks in investment risk assessment. And again, it also references the consideration that climate-related risks can impact the assets and liabilities to different channels, and how this can then possibly also in turn impact climate change and the environment. Then lastly, on ICP 16, here we have added throughout the ICP different cases of where climate-related risks are particularly important. So for instance, in ISP 16, in ISP 16.1, which talks about more general requirements for insurance companies to cover all relevant risks in their ERM. Also, as one of the examples, climate-related risks is now mentioned. Then, as it relates to modeling risk and stress testing, we also refer to climate risks. Again, also in relation to the investment policy, which is in ISP 16.6. And finally, we talk about the usage of the insurer's own risk and solvency assessment, or ORSA, which is covered in ISP 16.12 and ISP 16.16. So in each of these cases, again, we're not changing the actual requirement, we're not changing the standards. We are merely explaining through examples and recommendations how these standards can be applied to also cover climate-related risks. And again, the proposed supporting material then further elaborates by giving examples, notably, for instance, for different types of insurers and different topics, giving examples on how this can be incorporated, not only on the issues above, but also on a couple of other items of relevance. So, for instance, related to the strategy of a company, the risk appetite, risk limits, asset and liability management, and further information about the ORSA and the role of climate-related risk management in there. So this brings me to my final slide, which is more a slide on the process and the timelines, just as a reminder for everyone to be aware that the consultation period is a 90-day consultation period. So everyone is invited to still provide their comments up until 19 June, midnight Basel time. And all parties are invited to send their comments. You can give comments on just one particular element of the consultation, if that's of interest to you, or you can give comments to each and every topic as you wish. Please provide your comments through the consultation tool, which you can find on the consultation page. And we then will consider all these comments together also with the comments that we received on the other packages before we can then finalize an updated version of all our materials once we finalize all these different consultations. So thank you all for your interest, and now we will move to the Q&A. So we are happy to answer any questions you may have, or any comments, hear any comments from you. So as mentioned already at the start of today's call, you can write your question in the chat function, or you can use the Q&A function as well. I would say we pause here for a moment to give people a chance to write their questions in the chat or Q&A function before we then handle them one by one. So Daniel, I do not see any questions yet, but maybe I'll give people another minute or so, and because I already see them coming in right now.
So Hannah, I think there's one about whether IIS has released feedback from the previous consultation. I think this one you can take from Mariana.
Yes, I'm happy to answer this one. So for the climate consultation that we did, the first one that we did last year in March, we have published all the comments received, and we also published at a high level our responses, in a sense that the main purpose of the first package was to give an update on the overall work, and receive feedback on the scope of the rest of the work. So to the extent that the responses related to what should and should not be covered in the rest of the consultation packages, we have given feedback on that. For instance, how we have now proposed further elements related to ICP 7 and 8 in the supporting material. And also there was a question on the role of the IAS in relation to transition planning as well. So we did provide some very high level updates on that. And related to package 2, that consultation finished end February, so about 1.5 months ago. So we have not yet been in a position to develop more detailed responses, but the idea is that we will, throughout these consultations, we will try to give high-level feedback to stakeholders as soon as possible, and then we will give more comprehensive feedback to all the different consultation responses at the end of the project, because there's, like I said, there's a bit of an iterative process whereby comments received on a certain package can also influence our work on the further packages, and we don't want to we want to make sure that we finalize all the work before we give these comprehensive responses.
Okay, thanks, Gabor. He has put in two pretty long set of comments. In case others in the chat are not able to read it, the first set of comments point to the fact that, at least from his view, that we on the IIS side has focused too much on the risk element and less on the opportunities arising from climate change. I presume by opportunities, Gabor, you're referring to business and product related opportunities from the private insurer's point of view. So I think fair enough. I acknowledge this point, but do bear in mind that we are prudential supervisors. So quite clearly we are focused on the risk. So I think it's quite understandable. And to be fair, there's quite a lot of different areas, even in the ones that you have put on the chat. You can see that there are many different ICPs that does have an impact on climate risk management, and hence that has been our focus. Whether we can provide some greater balance into the ICPs to talk about the opportunities, I suggest you send these comments again, and so let us have a deeper look in the coming months whether we can do so. But I think end of the day, based on the preponderance and the mandates that the IAS has, you'll probably still lean on the side of from a risk angle. But certainly, please write in, and we'll see whether there's opportunities to provide a little more balance. On your second comment, Gabor, that insurers do take a forward-looking view. I think we are, just to be clear, we are at the IIS and among insurance supervisors, we are not saying that insurers do not take a forward-looking view, right? All we are trying to do here is to say that this is a reminder that they do need to take that view, right? So I think I will just leave it as that. Oliver, I'm sure, thanks for your comments. Just let me quickly read it. Could you, Oliver, if it's possible for you to speak, could you sort of explain your question a bit more? Are you asking whether double materiality is featured in the ICP guidance? Could you clarify that?
Daniel, I think he may be asking why we didn't use the terminology double materiality. But I think we can confirm that this is something that maybe, as Oliver mentions himself already, there are maybe different terminology being used across the globe. And as the IAS, because we're a global association, we always try to use the more general language that is then understandable and known across different jurisdictions and regions. So what we mean here is that we look at what could be the impact of an insurer's own decisions in terms of business models and investment strategy, ultimately on climate-related risks, because there could sometimes be indeed these feedback loops, etc. But we are not using this terminology because it may not be interpreted in the same way across the globe.
And also, just to add to what Hannah is saying, Oliver, that the phrase double materiality is also not directly referenced in some of the guidance given out by other standard setting bodies, such as the Basel Committee. So I think we all understand what it means, and certainly we have that intent at the IIS to look at both aspects. But some jurisdictions do see that phrase as speaking to only is a jurisdiction or regional specific term. So we, in the sake of inclusiveness, we cover both areas, but we just do not use that particular phrase. I hope you understand that. Any other questions and comments? Gabo, I note your third comment here, and certainly, like I said, we'll feel free to write in, and we'll see whether you can provide a bit more balance, taking in your feedback.
So I do not see any further comments or questions. So I think with that, we can close the call, and I want to thank everyone for tuning in today and for listening, and thank you in advance for responding to the consultation so that we can further finalize these materials, and have a nice rest of your day and week. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining.